So delighted to be joined by Eddie Hearn on a lovely late summer's day here at Matchroom headquarters. Just wrapped up a sort of unusual but very nice press conference for the September 30th card.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, good host.
I just think, like, sometimes just doing something a bit different. Every day or every week we do a press conference, same format. I thought the summer's here, let's have a barbecue, get a few people together, a little bit informal. I think it's worked well.
Am I allowed to call this work or not?
That's the thing. People say to me, what do you do outside of work? I was like, well, what would I want to do outside of this? Do you know what I mean? So this is life.
Just touching on that September 30th card, great couple of fighters on stage there. I'm sure it's one that you're excited for, likes of Jordan Thompson, George Liddard, great last fight on the AG undercard, Maisie Rose too.
Jordan Thompson Opetaia is a really good fight. Like, I've got to be honest, it's come weirdly unexpectedly, to be honest with you. Like, Jordan Thompson, we planned to get him 2 more fights after getting in the IBF rankings and then challenge for the world title. And then obviously Rakpur pulls out the Opetaia fight, and it's like, he needs a fight, and he'll fight in London, and we've got Jordan Thompson, and he's up for it. He punches like a mule. Opetaia's a beast. It's just a really good fight between 2 good athletes and the best cruiserweight in the world in Opetaia, and Jordan Thompson with an opportunity to fight and really become the best cruiserweight in the world in one fight.
I think, just from my point of view, a lot of those fighters on stage, they've all got sort of the same sort of confidence. They just seem so confident themselves. Jordan in particular, George obviously.
Yeah.
Do you get that sort of same vibe just sitting up on stage hosting that with them?
Yeah, and I think you get that vibe from the gym as well. That comes from the preparation. And I think Tony Sims does a brilliant job of preparing these fighters for war. And you need skill, you need ability. You can't just train hard, but they've got ability and skill, and they train very hard, so they are confident. And there's a great feeling in, we need to produce these new stars coming forward now over the next 2 and 3 years. We can't just focus on, the Lee Woods and the Anthony Joshuas and the Katie Taylors and the Chantel Camerons. Like, we need to produce the Jimmy Sains and the George Liddards and the Shannon Ryans and the Maisie Rose to become headline acts, and they're all selling a lot of tickets as well, and I think it's going to be a good card. Obviously Ellie Scotney not here today, and Chev Clark both in good fights as well. It's a fun night on September 30th.
Speaking of big stars, one that's in action in the co-main event of the Fury and Ngannou card is Fabio Wardley. I know there's some sort of exactly, there was some sort of mad yesterday. I'm guessing you're watching that from here going, oh my god, oh no.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was surprised to see it. You'd always want security to avoid those issues, but at the same time they're big heavyweight lumps and it's not always easy. So I've seen some reports that he's busted his hand and he's got a cut on his chin and his eye. So what have they got, 8 weeks to that fight? Not the best. And hype is all good, but you never want to see people come into blows, especially not getting cut and hurt. It's a bad look. But obviously we live in a prize fighting sport, and there's a lot of emotion.
These things obviously happen, and I don't know if you spoke to Fabio since. You reckon that fight is kind of maybe see how the fingers?
I mean, we haven't spoken much to Fabio, well, to Dillian Whyte at all since he failed his test, and he's Fabio's a good guy, good fighter. I hope he makes the date.
Just what was your reaction to that press conference general? I feel like Bob and Frank were both sort of making the point of, look, Ngannou is known for his punching power. They're sort of, a lot of the pundits think it's not going to be close at all. They were trying to steer it in the other way. Look,
yeah, it's their job as promoters. I mean, look, it's a great event, and you see how well the Saudis do the events. The press conference look great, and I'm sure it'll do good numbers. I think it all comes down to what you want, really, as a fighter. Like, I don't think you can criticise Fury for not caring about legacy or undisputed, because it's down to the individual. My original comments, which is just disappointing that he's not focusing on becoming the greatest heavyweight of our generation, or even in history, because those fights are in front of him. And I understand fights not happening because the money's not good enough, but when the money's massive, like it is for Usyk and like it is for AJ, and you can secure your legacy there as one of the greatest of all times, I just hope you'd want to do that as a fighter. I know the kids up there who you're talking to, every one of them, if you said to, what would you like to be? What would you like to get out of the sport? That every one of them say undisputed. Beat every champion. That's really why you get into the sport, but it's not for everyone. And if Fury's at that stage in his career where he just wants money, and obviously he's doing it against a guy that's never boxed before, so he's probably thinking, I've won the lottery here, I'm getting a load of money to fight a bloke that's never had a fight. Why would I want to take a little bit more money to fight Usyk, who's a dangerous fighter, or AJ that can whack and, So I don't blame him for the business decision. Obviously Frank and Bob are just doing their job, you know, but sometimes as a promoter, you have to convince yourself that it's a great fight and able to sell it that way.
Another Fury in Shane, probably going to laugh at these comments. He said he had some sort of inside sources that Joshua Wilder's dead in the water. I don't know where he's hearing that from.
No, it's definitely not dead in the water, but it's slow. I mean, without doubt. You know, I think you see obviously different entities now involved in boxing in Saudi, and for us, we've already agreed terms for that fight with Saudi, but we yet to sign a contract. And you know, I'm sure their strategy is moving all the time. There is a chance it doesn't happen. I've never said there isn't, but when we were told 6 or 7 weeks ago by the people who we've done 2 fights with before that this fight is done, we have a lot of confidence that that is fact, and that was delivered in my interviews with you guys. Now things have changed a little bit in that landscape. I don't know what they're going to want to do. Are they going to want to do the 2 fights on the same night, which is also now being discussed? Do they want to do Usyk Fury? Do they want to do Fury AJ? I don't know, but sooner or later, over the next couple of weeks, we'll get to a spot in time where we need to move on with not necessarily that fight, but December, January. And that might involve taking a fight in December.
What would you say to the people who say, oh, Fury and Ngannou has been made in Saudi, why can't this fight? Is it apples and oranges in terms of...
Because once the money is available, the fight's made. If the money's not, you know, if the deal we've been promised or told doesn't reach the contractual stage, it don't happen. If Fury and Ngannou didn't, then that wouldn't have happened either. So once the money's confirmed and secure and the contracts are signed, we're in for the Wilder fight. Wilder's in for that fight. It's just, you know, whether that fight progresses in that territory, and that's over to them.
What other countries could you see maybe hosting that fight?
I think 2 or 3 in the Middle East. You know, it's a massive fight. It's arguably the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing. So yeah, but we could also hold the fight in Vegas. We could hold the fight at Wembley. But obviously we know, as you've seen with that fight, there is, you know, good site fees available in that part of the world. So there's 3 or 4 options, but it's really down to whether he fight. You know, if that fight starts slowing, he may just fight in December and then move into that fight in February or March. He's enjoying the activity. You know, he boxed twice in what, 3 months, 4 months, which is quite unique for him. But he wants to stay active.
Speaking of active, I know you mentioned if things maybe don't go to plan, it could be maybe Hrgovic or the Ruiz trilogy. What one do you think, if the Wilder fight doesn't happen, to be more likely those 2?
I don't know. I mean, I always get asked that question. We haven't really started exploring opponents because, as far as we were concerned, that fight's done. If it's not done, we need to move. The Hrgovic fight is definitely a fight, although he's going to be mandatory to Usyk. Ruiz 3 could be an option. Zhang, if he beats Joyce. Joyce, if he beats, I don't know. You know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stalling ground from the heavyweights. But AJ wants to fight for the world heavyweight title. That's ultimately what he wants. But so does everybody. And if Usyk's not fighting at the moment or waiting for Fury and vice versa, the other guys have got to fight each other.
Going back to last Saturday, I'm sure you watched the Chris Eubank Liam Smith rematch. You know, a great performance. Were you thinking as soon as that fight's over, like the Conor Ben talks are going to start again there? Yeah,
we was already in touch with Callum. I texted him on the morning of the fight saying, please either win or lose well. You know what I mean? And obviously he won. It was a strange fight. Obviously Liam wasn't at the races, but you shouldn't also take away from the fact that Eubank had prepared well. He was in good shape, and you know, his career was on the line, and he put it together and he got a great win.
If you had to bet on it, would you bet on that fight, Chris and Conor happens here?
It's inevitable. But I really do, you know, I mean, it's the biggest fight for Eubank, it's the biggest fight for Conor. Calla wants it, we want it. I just don't see how it doesn't happen, and I believe it'll happen in December.
On a different note, I wanted to go back to almost 4 years ago. You're involved in one of the biggest fights that we didn't think would be a big fight in KSI Logan 2, and I go on that because this year has been, you know, a big year for boxing in general. We've got KSI Tommy coming up soon. 4 years since you're involved in that rematch. How have you, you know, sort of reflected on the growth of that? I know you've been not as involved as you once were, but you did a fight with Jake Paul with the Taylor Cameron one, but it's got crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the growth. You know, I look at events like KSI against Tommy Fury. I think it's good for boxing. It's a massive fight. It's on DAZN, which obviously is influential to us as well. It's going to bolster DAZN's viewership and subscriber numbers. We just got to focus on boxing and make sure that we keep deliver delivering a great schedule and the best fights in boxing, because I made my mind up many years ago that wasn't for me. Left a lot of money on the table, but at the same time I get to do what I truly love, which is professional boxing and bringing young fighters through and, you know, building big fights, the best be the best in the division. And I think the two can definitely coexist, but I think it puts more pressure on us as boxing promoters to create relevant fights, because if you don't, the viewership for those fights will be bigger. You know, not every influencer show does great numbers, but certainly the KSI events and the Logan Paul events, and you know, they do fantastic numbers and they're great marketeers, and I think overall it's good for the sport.
And obviously boxing's a sport, but it's also a business. But did you not look after that KSI Logan rematch, and was part of you thinking, God, this did so well? Was it maybe part of you wanted to stay in for that reason, or maybe the core traditional boxing values took over? I'm
just so busy with other stuff, and like, I don't know. Sometimes it's quite unusual for me to, you know, lead with my heart rather than my head when it comes to business or money. But I just didn't. I enjoyed it. It wasn't like, oh, I hated every minute of it. I just thought, like, I think when you're selling, you have to sell with passion, and I just wasn't a believer in the product. It just was, you know, like I love boxing so much, and I still watch it. I still think it's great, influencer boxing, but it's just not something that I can hand on heart go out and flog week in, week out.
Have you been keeping up with the Logan Paul, Dillon Danis?
Yeah, a little bit. That's all wild, isn't it? I mean, it's just like, if that was in normal boxing, you'd see a lot more Fabio Wardleys against David Adelaide, because that fight wouldn't happen. Someone would be taken out. You know what I mean? Like when it gets that personal. But it's different in that world. You know?
I know you said your heart wasn't in it, but when things happen like the Daniela Helmsley thing on DAZN, is that sort of part of your decision to go away? Is there's no really lines in the influencer boxing thing?
Yeah, not really. I don't know. Like that sort of stuff. That sort of stuff doesn't really bother me. I mean, I get interviewed about it, and I just say, you know, it's not. I don't think it's great for the sport boxing. I don't think it's great for young. I have 2 daughters. I don't really want them to be watching that and thinking that's acceptable. You know, you wouldn't expect a man to drop his shorts at the end of a fight, and I'd be thinking exactly the same thing. But we also live in a crazy world that's generally about attention and views and numbers and etc, etc. And yeah, like I said, it's a different world now, but I feel like we'd be like hypocrites, but like, we're talking about the importance of grassroots boxing. I'm talking about the importance that boxing can play to educate the younger generation and teach them all the things that I think are important in life. And at the same time that's happening, it's kind of cuts across the message that I think boxing can deliver to young people, and particularly within the community.
You think with, again, speaking of your daughters and that sort of age demographic, it's maybe harder to get them into, you know, the traditional boxers you have on stage there than it is to an influencer, because it is the way it is?
Of course. Like, you know, if Jimmy Sains has 10,000 Twitter followers or Instagram followers, and I don't know, Salt Pappy's got 1 million or whatever, a couple of million, obviously, you know, you've got a greater opportunity to interact with that audience, and they know a lot of those people already. So, but I think that can work in a positive way as well, you know, where I think a lot of these guys, KSI, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, they love boxing, and I think they respect boxing. They're not taking it, so I think that's good. I think if the audience can see what boxing means to them and how it's helped them, then that's a positive as well at the same time.
There's one last one. Outside of the Eubank Ben and the AJ Wilder fight, what's one fight that you're hopeful of being made this year that maybe is going under the radar that you'd like to see?
Definitely Haney Prograis over the line. I think, you know, working with Devin again, undisputed lightweight world champion, getting him an opportunity to become a 2-division world champion, but also getting our guy in Regis Prograis an opportunity to have a massive scalp and become a superstar himself. So, you know, we've got that. I'm really looking forward to Wood Warrington and Taylor Cameron rematch as well. But, you know, I expect to hopefully make Haney Prograis, Ben Eubank, and again, if Wilder AJ doesn't happen, another big fight for AJ in December as well.